Thank you for tuning in to the Lessons of Vietnam live streaming show tonight, where we strive to tell you the real story of the American Vietnam War. I am your host, Bill Dixon, Vietnam veteran, June 67 to June 68. During the Tet Offensive, I was at a post 20 miles north of Saigon. I was right in the Long Binh was the name of the post, and it was right next to Ben Wire Air Base. The show is broadcast from the studios of Nissan Communications, located in Raleigh, North Carolina. Through their generosity of Nissan Communications, given the time and studio time, we're able to bring you the Lessons of Vietnam show. And we hope that it's somewhat educational and entertain you a little bit as we discuss the Vietnam War. It's important to me and Amnon here that we tell you the real story of the Vietnam War. If you disagree with anything or need more information on anything we discuss, please reach out to me at BillDixon80@yahoo.com. There's nothing more misreported, misunderstood, full of myths and lies than the Vietnam War. Help me tell it right. That's one of the things I'm after, is trying to tell the real story. As we get started tonight, I want to give a special shout out to Russell Page's Cary High School Lessons of Vietnam course. Russell's been teaching the course at Cary High School for quite a few years now, and I look forward to meeting all of them on Friday when I go in to speak to the class. I'm going to ask them all about eating rice and how many of them like rice and so forth. Please see on your screen the information about watching the show and how to get to it. Yeah. Okay, it was there a minute ago. Okay. All right, well, let's go this way. Phone 919-518-9773 if you would like to type in the show. Go to Skype, Computers 2K Voice, and see come on the show and take part of the show. Well, that's you're as much as important to the show as information. So we want to make sure that you have a chance to get in. I'll try to remember. You can tell me to remember during the show to come out and tell you that it's 919-518-9773 if you want to take part. And when I left home, that slide was there, but somewhere between home and here, it just kind of disappeared. It's amazing how it does that. If you are a veteran or know a veteran, you can see the crisis line information there. Please reach out and to the veteran and have them to call this number. There's some good people there to ready to help you. Now, we're going to be talking about a kind of unusual thing tonight on the show. We're going to talk about cartoons of the show. I think there's one before that. Nope, the other way. We're going to be talking tonight about cartoons. Okay, there's one. Okay. I told you it disappeared. It's amazing how things, when I put it down, it disappears. We're going to be talking about cartoons and the funny aspects of the war. But make no mistake, as we talk about it, wars are brutal, stressful, exhilarating, deliberating, physical and mental experience. You can see mankind at its worst and its absolute best. It's hard to believe that you can see it worst and best, but as you read some of the stories of some of the Purple Heart, some of the Medal of Honor recipients and so forth, you realize that these men give everything and women give everything they had. Once you experience it, it's always there. A sound, a smell, an experience, a date, a place, everything has its own triggers. But as veterans of this experience, as we look back at the events, with other veterans, we can see the humor now and that we could not see then or a few years ago. We look at things and look at them a kind of completely different way now than we did before. Tonight's show, we'll look at some of the cartoons, as we've said, those who experience and discuss just what they're trying to tell us. I'm going to try to explain to you. If you're a Vietnam vet out there, hang with me a little bit as I try to explain to the non-Vietnam vets just what some of the cartoons are. All right, let's get started on them and see what we got. The first one here. And okay, University of Vietnam, of course. The Vietnam experience, it cannot be inherited, nor can it be purchased. I earned it. My blood, sweat, and and tears and everything else. I own it forever, the title of Vietnam veteran. And that's all Vietnam veterans out there. It's not something you can go down into the store and buy. You got to been there, done that. As we say, bought the T-shirt, read the book, and saw the movie. Okay. This one I liked. It was not part of the series of some of the cartoons I'm going to show you, but I like it here. It says, as you can see, this guy's, well, back in our day, we used to call him a hippie. I went to the Marine recruiter, like you suggested. But when I was done signing, he realized that he used an Army contract by mistake. In other words, a Marine recruiter did not want this guy, so he used a Army recruiting sheets and had the guy signed up for the Army before he even realized it. Now, each service kind of picks on itself a little bit, but I just had to put this one in there. This is Air Force Boot Camp. As you can see there, the sergeant is explaining to this young recruit about how to fire his weapon. Okay, but if you ever get into a real firefight, find the nearest Marine and give him all your ammo. That kind of, explains itself, I think, so forth. Now, this is the cartoons I'm going to be showing you the most tonight. It's called In Country, Memories of a Tour of Duty in South Vietnam, and it's by Philip B. Fehrenbacher. I probably murdered that name, but that's okay. His cartoons are fantastic, and as you can see there, we're going to be seeing that one a little bit more as we go along, okay? Now, let's talk about it before you get there. Now, when I was at basic training on the right-hand side, you had so many seconds just about to eat your food. If you can taste the food, you're not eating it fast enough. That was kind of the idea of the drill sergeants. And now, hurry up, only have 15 minutes left. And if it don't too bad, they hold up the card and say, you're stressing me. So that's kind of the difference in between the drill instructors today and the drill instructors back in my time. Okay. Now, here you are going to Vietnam. There's a plane that's coming in, especially at Ben War Air Base and some of the others. The Viet Cong, or the communists, like to welcome you to Vietnam. So quite often they would be dropping mortar rounds on the runway, or they had snipers up. So the plane wouldn't kind of land, it would just kind of drop. And you can kind of get the idea, why don't you drop in and stay for a while? This is the captain speaking. You may notice we're taking a steeper than normal glide path to avoid enemy sniper fire. And that's just about how it felt too. And when it was going down quick. Okay. Now this one, I'm from North Carolina. I worked back there as growing up, and I thought I was used to heat and humidity and so forth. And the first of many understatements about Vietnam. Welcome to South Vietnam. As you deplane, you will notice a slight increase in temperature and humidity. Now, listen, you didn't have to feel it. You could see it. You could smell it. You could touch it. Oh, that stuff was thick. And definitely a understatement that it was a slight temperature and humidity change. Now, as you're getting off the plane, you start seeing some of the people going out, leaving Vietnam, the replacements going home and so forth as you're coming in, and you see these soldiers at 1,000 yards stare. These guys have been there, the uniform, your uniform is nice and crisp and green, and their uniform may have been at green at one time. Sometimes it's hard to tell, raggy and so forth, but they got that strange look. It's such a strange look, you're scared of them. You don't even want to get close to them. This is another thing. Now, evidently, the gentleman who did these cartoons was down in the Delta. So if you were down in the Delta area, you were wet all the time. You didn't wear underwear. So here's this new guy says, so do you guys wear boxers or briefs in the bush? And the young corporal there is kind of chuckling to himself, underwear, that's a good one. Because if you wore underwear, you end up with rashes that you would not even believe. Your rashes would have rashes. So, because after a while, your uniform really rot off on you. So you didn't have to worry about briefs or boxers in the bush. And also, right after you got to Vietnam, you found that you had a special roommate wherever you went. The Vietnam rat was with you. They were with you when you ate. They were with you when you sleep. My first encounter of a Vietnam rat, which is probably 14, 15 pounds on a good day, I'm sleeping in my bunk with a mosquito net on me. And I wake up and there's a rat sitting on my chest, and I haven't yet figured out how he lifted up that mosquito net and got out of there. But he did. So that's kind of getting you. We're trying to get you a little bit acclimated to country with some of the interesting things. The transition into monsoon season. Vietnam has two seasons, hot and wet and hot and dry. And when I'm talking about wet, 12 inches of rain in 24 hours is not unheard of. There is no place to get dry. If during the dry season, you could take a jar, put a lid on it, and put something in it, and it would end up with dusty during the dry season. But this is kind of giving you an idea how it went from monsoon season. It was like you woke up one day and it started raining, and then one day, seems like a year later, it stopped. But in between, you got trench rot, your hands and feet and everything else kind of pucker up and so forth. Now you're in country and you're reading from information from home because there wasn't a whole lot of information about the Vietnam War. And this guy says, "Hey guys, my mom sent a Vietnam tour guide. Vietnam is an enchanting land populated by happy, friendly people. The tropical climate and approximately 2,000 inches of rainfall per year contributes to a variety of lush vegetation and diverse wildlife. While visiting, make the cities of Hue and Saigon a must-see." As you can see, he's sitting there eating his sea rations, and his buddies are throwing a can at him because, there's a lizard there, and I can't really tell you what that lizard was known for, but it was something new. Um, and of course, the mosquitoes flying around and so forth. So, okay. Now, also, when they like to welcome you in the country and so forth, so you got to hear that thunk. When you hit that thunk, you knew what was going to happen. So you started finding wherever you were, you started finding a bunker somewhere, and you can see that guy diving in. There's some eyeballs looking out back out. Now, you hope those eyeballs looking out are people. It could have been rats. It could have been snakes. It could have been a little bit of everything. Mama saw I like to use the bunkers for bathrooms quite often. So, but here's getting ready to eat his sea rations, and he hears that thunk. And so you want to get out of the way because a bullet may have your name on it, as they say, but a mortar round is to whom it may concern. Okay. Now, also, you got to get used to you go out there and you're trying to find as much thing as you can. So here's a new guy talking to an old guy. The old guy is sitting there trying to get some dry socks with the mosquitoes flying around him. "Hey, man, I don't see the EM club or mess hall. And where do I get my bedding and drop off my laundry?" And the old guy has been there. He's probably been there a week or two. Says, "Don't know. I'll ask the maid when I see her." And as you can see, a little difference in the uniform as things are going around and so forth. But okay. Now, this one on the left-hand side of your screen says, "Hey, I just got here. What's it like spending a month in the field?" And you see this guy who looks like he's been there a year or two. He says, "How should I know? I just got here a week ago myself." And you can already see the difference in the uniform and the weapons and everything else. And learning who's new in your unit. The sergeant walks up and says, "You must be the new guy." As you can see, he's got a leech on his arm. He's got some sores on his arm, and mosquitoes are flying around him. And the new guy's standing there with his nice green uniform and all his baggage and so forth there. And he says, "You must be Sherlock Holmes." He's just figuring out that I'm the new guy. Okay. And also, there's always a little hazing. Now, let me tell you about Nuke Mom. Nuke Mom is a fish sauce that Vietnamese use. I believe you can smell Nuke Mom 5 miles away if the wind's blowing the other way. Here's kind of how they make it. You take a barrel and you sit out in the middle of a hot field and you put some fish and you put some salt, you put some fish and you put some salt till you finally fill up the barrel. And after about a week or so, you go pour some water in there and it kind of filtrates down through the They call it fermenting fish. It's more like rotten fish, and they put it on everything. And the new guy gets to have a cup of Nuke Mom to try out. And well, you have to kind of be there to really appreciate it. But if you ever go to a Vietnamese restaurant, be sure where it says fish sauce, take the lid off and take you a little swallow. You'd appreciate it. And if you remember, Robin Williams did a movie that was by Adrian Cronauer, and he started out with "Good Morning Vietnam." And the opinions, as you see, they varied just how good it was. You're in the rain, you're eating your sea rations, the snakes and stuff are flying around you. So it kind of, depending on where you were and what you were doing, just how good morning it was. And of course, there's always a reporter there, and you can go up and give them your perspective of the war. The reporter is saying, "Want to tell the folks back home what this war means to you?" And this is probably the new guy. He's probably the lieutenant. "Well, it's our chance to stem the communist tide, free the South Vietnamese people, preserve democracy, yada, yada, yada." And the brother back there is saying, "It don't mean nothing, man. See, it don't mean nothing because all you were doing was you're serving your 364 days in a wake up. That's the day you come home." Now, it's amazing when you start getting shot at how low you can get. Now, here's a guy that's actually crawled inside of his helmet. Holy crap. To think a year ago, I was sweating a high school term paper. And here is now a highly trained troop in charge of all this weapons and so forth, and comes under fire. The buildings around them are burning. Hell is falling about, and he's trying to get up under that helmet. I've heard people talk about the buttons were too big when they were laying down. They want to take the buttons off because they get a little bit lower. It's amazing what you do when you start getting shot at. This was a Butter-Bar. A Butter-Bar was a second lieutenant. We call them 90-day wonders quite a bit because after boot camp and so forth, or basic training, then they went to became 90-day wonders. And you can see as a 90-day wonder just got in country, and a sergeant who's been in country probably 6 months to about out of a year, and it says, "But Sarge, I'm in charge, right? Right, Sarge?" And the sergeant says, "Absolutely, not try to keep up and don't touch anything." See, we always thought about the most dangerous thing in Vietnam was a second lieutenant, or Butter-Bar, a map and a compass. But quite often, this young 90-day wonder would come in and try to tell an experienced sergeant, because after all, he was an officer, what to do and so forth. And the sergeant had all the experience in the world, and this guy didn't have any experience. But here's a sergeant showing him around. Now, if you got to work with the Vietnamese military, quite often you see these guys that must have had the uniforms tailored, because I still can't figure out how to get them unless they had quite often the zippers on the side. And here's a Spec 4 sitting there and says, American Spec 4 says, "Ben, how do you get a uniform off? Scissors or paint thinner?" And of course, they would be carrying quite often and wearing quite often our uniforms. And if you want to see something funny, see a South Vietnamese soldier carrying a Browning automatic rifle. They're probably about 6 feet tall, the rifles, with the tripod and everything. And the Vietnamese is probably 4'10" or something. And here's one. Being an ARVN advisor had its challenges. "You understand, Tron? Is that a yes? Or is your helmet too damn big?" In other words, you don't know when he's moving his head, if it's his helmet bouncing up and down, and he's actually agreeing with you. So as you can see, the soldiers are going off on patrol or whatever and trying to find out where you're on the map. Also, one of the people over there, probably one of the greatest allies we've ever had, they were the mountain people, the Central Highlands, the Montagnards. When we first went to Vietnam, they were very similar to the American Indian. The men were wearing loincloths, as you can see there. Usually you have crossbows. Quite often women were topless. But the South Vietnamese, or the Vietnamese altogether, were scared of them and treated them bad. They did not want the South Vietnamese, our allies did not want us to give the Montagnards weapons and teach them how to fight because they're afraid they would turn them against us. But they are the best allies we've ever had. They work quite a bit, mostly with the special forces. And here in North Carolina, right down in Asheboro, North Carolina, which is an area very similar to the Central Highlands, the Special Forces guys have bought 100 acres and turned it over to the Montagnards so they can live very similar there. But the Montagnard diet is interesting to say the least. Everybody eats out of a communal pot. So here we have the Vietnamese interpreter telling the young captain there is, first bite of monkey brains is great honor, Dayu. That's Dayu is what they was Vietnamese for captain. Do not insult by refusing to eat. So here's this captain knowing that ally there, and he's got to eat monkey brains or whatever worse to not to lose favor with his Montagnard family and so forth. As you can see, the houses built up off ground, and they have where they keep their animals and so forth under it. But those are fantastic people. Also, as you go out there was a thing called elephant grass. It grew anywhere from, you see it there, up to 10 to 12 feet tall. It was so thick, it was like being in the middle of a wheat field. You couldn't see nothing. Also, if you were, I know it's hot and humid, but when you went through the elephant grass, you wanted to make sure you rolled your sleeves down because that would cut you up. It was like razor blades. So let's see the soldier in the back, it says, ouch, ouch, ooh, doc, you got any more Band-Aids? And the guy in the middle says, can I get a Purple Heart for these cuts and sores? And that one you can't see is, I'm going to strangle whoever's humming, these boots are made for walking. That's probably the sergeant. And the guy right there sweating. You can see the mosquitoes and stuff forth flying around. And because wherever you went, the mosquitoes were. At least the leeches weren't too bad in there. And it's like you did at home. Are we there yet, Sarge? Because you wouldn't know where you were anyway. Just think about walking through that stuff and somebody shooting at you. Where did the bullet come from? And I couldn't leave this out. This is not a cartoon. Well, it is a cartoon. This is hams and lima beans. And you can see how that's the C rations. I never saw it in a nice pan like that. It was always in the C. But you see the box up there with the B2 unit. But that was hams and lima beans. There's lima beans in that stuff. And I actually got to say that it tastes worse than it looks, and that's hard to believe because it looks pretty bad right there. But that was hams and lima, and even the Vietnamese kids didn't want that. And off to your left-hand side was a P-38. That was a can opener that was probably the greatest thing the military ever came up with. And in the packet over here, you probably had some cigarettes, a little bit of toilet paper, and some matches, and a couple other things in there. Now, if you wanted hot C rations, what you do is you break off a little piece of C4. C4 is the explosive, and but you had to be real careful, as you can see there. As a guy standing in the background that says, you might use a skosh less chunk of C4 to heat your rats, partner, or C rations, it's called rats. Nothing says loving like something from the oven. As you can see, he's got a C ration, an old C ration can he's using for a stove, and it's got the C rations he opened on top. So you put a pinch of C4 under there and light it, and it burns real hot, real quick. But it runs, but you want to use, just as he says there, a skosh. That must be from the north, a northern soldier there, a skosh. But that kind of give you an idea that you had to be careful with the C4 as you used it because it was an explosive. Ah, yes, this is Monday. Malaria pill Monday. Do you feel lucky? Because now here's a soldier, young soldier standing there. He's got the mosquito saying, don't take it, don't take it. That means he's going to get malaria. But then you see the roll of toilet paper sitting there and says, do it, do it. Because the malaria pill, I guess, gave you a little bit of malaria because it got things moving. You could always tell the outhouses on Monday afternoons because that was malaria pill day. Says to take or not to take. That is the question. And usually there was some kind of a medic or whatever there going, take the damn pill, take the pill. And you had to choose, but anything is better than malaria. So as you can see there, he had his dog tags taped together so they wouldn't rattle around. That was one of the things we learned early on. Okay. Now he goes back to now you're getting ready to go out in the jungle or whatever out, and you're going to take a walk on the wild side, and you go and hit this guy's going 364 and a 364 and a wake up, 364 and a wake up, 364. And in other words, he's starting to count down already 364 days and a wake up, and probably the guys around him says, short, 90 days, 90 days, 60 days, 30 days. So he's going, and here he is, as you see there. He got punji stick sticking up. He's got unexploded ordnance. He got the wire struck across the trail for him to trip over and pull the grenade out. The snakes. If you look right up there where it says 364 and wake up, you see a millipede right there. Millipedes run about 2 feet long over there and so forth. So that's what he's got to look forward for the next 364 days and a wake up. Ah, yes. I mean, all of you out there probably love fireworks. I hate fireworks. New Year's Eve in Vietnam, or just about any night out there if you're out in the boonies, and you're sitting there watching the tracers. I don't know who come up with the idea that we use red tracers and the communists use green tracers. So as you can see planes flying around, helicopters flying around, you can see the red tracers coming down shooting at the bad guys. Then you start seeing the green tracers going back as they started shooting back, and the napalm is going off, and it got very colorful, but you could see just all the different lines, tracers. Normally a tracer is every 7th bullet, but it looks like a solid line. And it was interesting. And if you don't think about what's going on there, in other words, they're shooting at you. And I love this one. This one is the new lieutenant in town. Company C gets a new activities director. Now here you see they're sitting out there in the monsoon season. You see the guys eating his sea rations, and the rats are trying to get their share. And there's that lizard again, and they're trying to keep dry and smoke his cigarette. And this young lieutenant is giving, I'm appointing you company morale officer. Make them happy, lieutenant. As you can see up there, but the mosquitoes are taking a guy away. And this lieutenant's job is to make these guys happy, keeping their morale up. They're eating sea rations, hadn't had a hot meal, and hadn't had dry feet, and God knows how long, because they haven't seen the shovels up there. They're having to fill up sandbags. I hated filling up sandbags. So that kind of gave you an idea of the lieutenant's job was keeping up morale. Oh, yes. Now we're getting serious. Are you hit? Worse, they've got my Tabasco sauce. Listen, Tabasco sauce and Texas Pete, that was important stuff to have because it made most sea rations good to eat. Well, no, I won't go so far as to say good to eat, but tolerable, except ham and lima. I don't think there's enough Tabasco made to ham and lima, but there they are in a bunker. As you can see, the helicopter shooting, bullets are coming in and so forth. And this poor guy has got his Tabasco sauce shot in two. Dealing with serious adversity is the name of that one. Now, to be warned only when telling war stories. And whenever you hear a Vietnam vet says this ain't no stuff, you know the chances are it's going to be telling a lie. But as you can see, that helmet had better days. But sometimes you find people that have a tendency to enhance their story a little bit, so the helmet kind of fits right in, and with an kind of advanced story, as we're saying. Now, let's just say that you want to go get a checkup, or you want to go to the vet and so forth there and get checked up. So, specialist, why are you here today? Well, medic, I've got heat rash, crotch rot, infected sores, immersion foot, worms, a touch of malaria, and well, I still better check you out for something serious. In other words, none of those things were considered serious there, because everybody basically had crotch rot and so forth. And now here's on the left, you have a nurse, and on the right, you have a donut dolly. And she's offering, as you can see there, and the helicopter's in the back. Donut dolly is giving the nurse some donuts and winning the hearts and minds of us. Now, our job was winning the hearts and minds of the Vietnamese people, and these two ladies' jobs win the hearts and minds of the soldier. So the nurse says, I had a 16-hour shift yesterday, but was able to get 4 hours sleep before more choppers came in this morning. And when choppers came in, they were not coming in necessarily bringing entertainment. They were bringing wounded soldiers, people who needed her to stay on her feet all day. And Donut Dolly, which is the Red Cross girls, we took a mortar attack at my first base camp this morning and a couple of sniper rounds landing here. Still 3 more fire bases to visit today. Donut, what they would do is take these young girls out. They would sometimes they'd take guitars with them and they'd sing and take games, and they'd play games and entertain the soldiers out in the fire bases with the leeches and the mosquitoes surrounded in the jungles and so forth. So more of those girls did not get killed, so forth. So, and as you can see the leech on the back of this guy going thlup, thlup. You need to see a medic because of one lousy leech. And they that's about the size they got sometimes once they got you good and started really sucking your blood. And finally they get so heavy they kind of fall off. But as you can see, there wasn't a whole lot of sympathy for just because you had a leech, so forth. Now, also the military, you will see that is very creative. Now, here's a young man in a bunk back in a base camp somewhere. And it says Bill Mauldin. For those of you who don't know, Bill Mauldin was a famous war artist who drew cartoons in World War II. And actually, he drew some cartoons when he went to visit his son who was serving in Vietnam. When he was in Vietnam visiting his son, he did some cartoons there, which we might see in a little bit. But here's a guy, he drew a picture of the sergeant, and the sergeant says, wow, you really nailed my likeness. I got to figure out how to use your considerable talents. So what he does is the military likes white rocks to set everything set off, going to the front door of the commander's barracks and so forth. So here's a guy that's great Garcia. That's Rock Hudson. There's Newt Rockney, Winston Churchill, and Rocky Marciano, and Fred Flintstone. In other words, he's taking his artistic talent and getting him out there to paint the rocks. Now, this will be at a base camp. This is not going to be in the field. Life is totally different in a base camp than it was in the field. Now, let's talk about again, we talked about Malaria Day. I was at a place called Long Bend. I'm losing Amnon. He's got all choked up. I got the shit burning. He got all choked up. I don't know what anything had anything to do with it or not. But Long Bend, there was no flush toilets. So there were. I never saw them. So we had outhouses, and on each house, they would take a 55-gallon barrel and cut it in two. And every day, some special soldier would get to pull that crap out, literally pull it out, and stand there and burn it. And there was always one in every crowd. Double toil and trouble, fire burn and cauldron bubble. Washington, don't you just love Shakespeare in the morning? This guy, Washington there, would like to stick him in the barrel because he's enjoying it too much. But just when you thought the detail couldn't be worse. But I'm going to tell you something. When you were doing this detail, nobody ever shot at you. The mosquitoes left you alone. The rats left you alone. Never got a leech. And you can even get a badge like that. But that was one of the interesting jobs over there that most people don't realize that had to go on and so forth. Okay. Uh-oh. Yeah, that would have been a nice sound. When I met my wife in Hawaii, and she thought I was crazy. Because when we got to the hotel room, I kept going into the bathroom and flushing that commode and sitting back there and going, God, listen to that sound. Isn't that a wonderful sound? A flushing commode. It's amazing that things can entertain you. A flushing commode. Now, in order for our pay, we got MPCs, military payment certificates. we were not allowed to use American money in Vietnam. In fact, we were told that you could get a court martial if you had American money. And an aunt, or I think it was my aunt and my grandmother, sent me a $20 bill, and I was scared to death somebody was going to catch me with that $20 bill. So we had military payment certificates, and we were not supposed to use those off the economy when you went into town and so forth. But they always did a surprise currency exchange. It was a surprise to the troops, but never to the Vietnamese people. If you look at the left hand of the screen, here they're going there, the surprise currency exchange. Oh, looks like a currency exchange is about to happen. See, they would be taking the military payment certificates, and after today, that money would be no more good. Because though you turn in, if you were a military or American soldier, you turn in whatever military payment certificates you had for the day and got some new ones, different pictures or whatever. So they knew that after that day, that money they had been using, taken from you, was no more good. So they'd be at the gates and at the fences like that. GI, 50 to 50, 50 to 1. In other words, if you just anything, just give me something for these. And we weren't supposed to do that. But as you can see there, the exchange. So here's a guy that says 20, 40, 60, 0, 100. Hey, is that Queen Elizabeth? It was very colorful, had some nice pictures and so forth. And this guy standing beside us, I think it's the Duke Pilgrim. And for you younger people, probably don't realize that, but the Duke was John Wayne, and he used to call people quite often Pilgrim in his movies. And but there they're getting their currency exchange, the young PFC there. Also, this was really kind of Hanoi Hannah. During World War II, there was in Japan had Tokyo, was it Tokyo Rose? Something like that. I don't what. Anyway, they had Hanoi Hannah. She played the best music, but they knew it all. See, here's two guys sitting there smoking a cigarette, drinking a beer in a base camp, and they're playing chess. Now, here's what Hanoi Hannah has to say: "GI, you miss home? I play. We got to get out of this place for you. Good luck on Hill 852 tomorrow. Specials, not wise to trade queens." In other words, she's telling those two guys right there, it's not wise to trade queens during their chess game. And how does she know they're sitting there playing chess? It's amazing how they knew things were going on. It would blow your mind sometimes. Okay? Now, this is not a cartoon in itself, but this is what they you see all over Vietnam, and there's very seldom see one now, is a lambretta. It's a motorcycle with a cab. And as you can see there, it holds 14 Vietnamese or 2 GIs. I mean, they'd be riding on top. I mean, it was amazing how they get people packed in there. And then there's your Vietnamese gas station. Young boys sitting out beside the road with gallon glass jugs of gas for the motorcycles and so forth. And so you stop by and fill up your motorcycle there with him. And but the lambrettas, you would listen. You probably would find it easier to live out in the field than to take a lambretta ride. Because those guys, I mean, they weave out in front of tractor trailers, trucks, deuce and a half, 3/4 tons. It's like beep the horn and keep right on going, and you just pray. Because as you will see later, there ain't a whole lot of rules to the road in Vietnam. And of course, we had to have entertainment. And they quite often, I don't think I ever saw but one, as we would call a round eye, which would be an American girl, doing entertainment there with the USO shows. Most of them are Filipinos, and they would be singing "Rolling Through the River," "Hang On, Shroopy, Shroopy, Hang On," the Mama Sons and Papa Sons, and there's the soldiers there who would just about anything for some entertainment. Hey, who needs Bob Hope, huh? The EM Club spared no expense to bring you a little slice of home. And those are more clothed than some of the ones we saw. Now, if you got a chance to go into Saigon or to one of the bigger bases, you had the bar girls there. And what they would want you to do is buy them a Saigon tea. Now, you number 10, Buku Cheap Charlie. Now, let me tell you, that's number 10, which means you are bad. If you were number 1, you were good. But if you were number 10, you were bad. Beaucoup cheap, and which means you're a whole, that was French for you are really cheap. So she says, you number 10, beaucoup cheap Charlie. You buy me another Saigon tea or IDD, and which means she's going to leave. In other words, if you want a girl to sit there with you and so forth, then you had to keep buying her Saigon teas and you buy beer. She couldn't drink the beer because after a while, when she went to the next guy and drank a beer, after a while she couldn't be getting that. And so you probably pay about as much for the Saigon tea as you did for the beer. And he says, you dinky down, which means you're crazy. I'm number 1. I love you too much. But you love all GIs. You butterfly, which means she goes back and forth from GI to GI. But she's getting her Saigon tea. And as you can see, the traffic of Saigon, you got a water buffalo, you got the pedicab. I don't even see a Lambretta, but you see a guy going on his guy on the motorbike there, or the moped there with the chicken in the back. That's not realistic. There would be 3 more people on that bike with him. Hey, Watson, try to get us out of here before rush hour. Rules for driving in Saigon, well, you don't need no stinking rules. I drove all over Saigon when I was there. I wouldn't get behind the wheel now of a vehicle over in Saigon, and that's about what it was when I was there. Clank, clunk, and so forth. Like I said, they're going every direction possible, but that's kind of like it is in Saigon, except today it's worse. Okay. Supply. Now, you can go to supply clerk because sometimes you might need a new pair of jungle boots, or you might need this, that, and the other, and supply clerk may not have it. But you can go to black market in any place where there's many soldiers. You can go to black market, and Vietnam Papa sign right there, he's going to have it. It says here, black market, Vietnam's answer to one-stop shopping. Hey, GI, you need socks, whiskey, a tape deck? I think we all bought a tape deck, a real tape deck while we were there. C4, you tell supply sergeant, I have many things, beaucoup cheap. Anything I do have, I can get. So all you get on, put in an order, and he'd have it. You could be taking a convoy of trucks or supplies, and they can unload the truck going down the road. You can see there, you can buy a tank in the back. It was like a 105 back there. There's grenades. There was nothing you couldn't buy off the black market there. The beer, everything. Now, how did you tell whether we're winning or losing in Vietnam? Well, it was called body count. So here you are waiting for the official count, where the young blooded bar lieutenant says, so then what would the colonel like body count to be? And the colonel's going, In other words, see, the colonel had to have a good body count for the general. And then there's a general looking at the general saying, I got to have a body count. And so the colonel there has got to come up with how many are we going to kill today to have a good body count. See, how you could tell whether you're winning or losing in a battle, if you kill more of them by body count that day than they killed of you, then you had a good day. So that was how we kept up with the war, was body count. And we never could quite figure out where these body count numbers came from. And we did get creative sometimes with turning in body counts. Sir, then here's a briefing. Sir, we have not identified the enemy units here. And there's Mama San sweeping the floor. She says, oh, that be the 2nd of the 27th Dong Na Regiment. In other words, she knows who the Viet Cong units are there. You just got to know who to ask. Goes right back to how those guys were playing chess, and Hanoi Hannah knew about it. Because Charlie, as we called him, the Viet Cong had ears everywhere. How do you tell the good guys and the bad guys? If it pointed a rifle at you, chances are he was a bad guy. But otherwise, there was no way to know, because Mama San may have Baby San back in the village, and she knows if she don't bring information home with her, that Baby San may not be there next time she comes home. Now, the rules of engagement: when you could shoot and when you couldn't shoot. And of course, the caption of this one is, well, I guess that clears that up. So here's a guy stuck his head in the door. As you can see, he's a little nervous. He's sweating there. We're taking fire from 300 yards downriver. Can return fire, sir? And the duty officer is saying, negative. First, get on the radio and get clearance from the company and battalion nets. That was networks. GOVAP district and the ARVN advisors. The GOVAP district was the kind of the state of what you're in. That was the Vietnamese district chief there. The ARVN advisor, you had to get permission from them. Then if they're still there and we're still here, you may return fire. Well, you may get the approval maybe in a day or so, or maybe not get it all. So sometimes you couldn't really shoot back kind of stuff. Now, there was definitely a difference between lifestyles at the main base camps. That reminds me of the ARVN, used to be headquarters at Long Bend, that two-story air-conditioned building behind this guy, but that's a major there. And here's two guys going along, and you see the sign there is PX, the theater, enlisted men's club, the pool, the snack bar, the gym, and the library. They didn't have all that stuff out in the field. They were lucky if they had a hot meal and a bed every now and then. And here are two guys going along on their Jeep, going to whatever it is they're going to do that day, particularly. And they probably got nice starch uniforms on there and the spit shine boots. And one guy says to the other one, as they're saluting the major, hey, are you going to take an R&R? R&R is rest and relaxations, where you got to leave the country for 4 or 5 days, 6 days, depending on where you were going, and get out of the country. Or you could take an in-country R&R at some of the beach resorts. And the other guy says, yeah, let's go to the club and plan one. I need to go away from here. That was kind of the difference between the guys in the base camps back here at Long Bend and so forth, as opposed to the guys out in the fire bases with the leeches and the mosquitoes and the rats and so forth. So, okay. Now, in Tet, 1968, that was when the Vietnamese communists attacked all the major bases. Long Bend was one of them. And as you can see there, everybody became infantry guys. 11 Bravo, as the sergeant is saying there, I need someone to man an M60. Any 11 Bravos here. And 11 Bravos were the infantry guys who were trained for infantry. And this guy says, supply sarge, sorry sarge, clerk typist, intelligence analysis, mess hall cook sarge, but they all got weapons as they were trying to keep them from overrunning the bases and so forth. But the poor sergeant can't find anybody who probably has an idea how to fire that M60 or feed it. Because quite often these guys hadn't seen one, maybe saw one during boot camp or so forth, but hadn't seen one since then and had no idea how to fire it. But you can say on-the-job training. Also, as you can see here, back to Tet again, when nearly everyone was in the infantry. You can see the Victor Charlie there, the Viet Cong on base, running around, blowing things up. And here's a young spec saying, reporting in, sir. This is a typewriter Remington automatic. I eat, sir. One each, sir. In other words, he's used to sitting there and typing things all day, and all of a sudden now he's got a M16 shoved in his face. And well, just do what you can with it, private. In other words, go out there and don't shoot yourself, and try not to shoot American, and just shoot it, and so forth. So that was going on during Tet. Yep. You became infantry almost immediately right there. And also back at base camp. So you got to realize, if you're out in the field as these guys are, you may not take a bath for a week, 2 weeks, or whatever. And let's put it this way, you stunk, but then the guy next to you stunk, but you didn't want to smell good, because you remember the nuke bomb I mentioned a while ago? When the Vietnamese communists ate nuke bomb, you could smell them. As they were coming down the trail, you could smell them. Well, if you went back, if you were took a nice perfume soap bath and you out there, they'd smell you. So you did not use eau de base camp. If you're out in the field, you only use that good smelling soap if you're back in the camp. What's that odd smell? Civilization. As you can see the guys there. And I love this one. Which one? And you know, sometimes we have people go, all right, whichever one you want, just go to one you like. All right, that one. Now, the guys out in the field, as you can see, different. I went out with the 9th Infantry when I went out as an engineer, and I went out with guys who hadn't seen a bed in 6 months. They humped all day with us, and they pulled ambulance duties all day. There was no 40-hour week, no 50-hour week or 60-hour week. But here's a guy trying it anyway. You can see leeches on the sergeant's arm and his arm. All got leeches as they're going through the water, and mosquitoes, of course, flying around. And it says, "Hey, Sarge, I got my 40 hours in and don't need the overtime. Be okay if I punch out and return to base camp?" That would have really went over well. But like I said, there was no 40-hour week. They were out there. There was 24/7 and so forth, out there in the water, always wet. Now here we are back at one of the base camps, and the guy sitting there is, "Man, you're lucky. You get to drive a truck. Just another drive in the countryside." And the truck driver wants to let this guy know that his job is not exactly a bed of roses either. Yeah, a noisy convoy of fuel and ammo trucks through enemy territory. What could go wrong? In other words, a stray bullet hitting the fuel truck and blowing up with the ammo. Those guys ran all over Vietnam with those trucks and those tankers and so forth. And may not have been infantry guys, but I can't think of a job that I particularly would like to be driving all over Vietnam or right through bad guys' territory with a tanker. And all the bad guys got mortar rockets and rifles and so forth. But okay, I was a Vietnam veteran before it was popular to be one. Now, so many people want to have wannabes out there. We've talked about it in other shows, but I was a Vietnam veteran before I wanted to be one, to be honest with you. But now it seems to be popular to be one. Now, I like this one. I don't smoke and so forth, but man, I'm going to have to quit smoking before I get out. Now, this was 1960, 65, 67, 68, 69, and so forth. And it says, "Can you imagine paying $4 to $5 a carton? Can you buy a pack today for $4 or $5? The guy says, "Why is that? Why is he going to quit smoking?" Because he can't afford $4 to $5 for a carton of cigarettes. That's why he's going to give up smoking over there. As you can see, they're filling up sandbags. Oh, I hated that job. And of course, as you ever so often you get together and saying, "We got to get out of this place. It's the last thing I ever do." The impromptu recording session of, well, playback's a bitch. And that's when they first get down to the EM club. And by the end of the night, they've been drinking the 33 beer or the Tiger Piss beer. And see, the water won't fit in the drink. So there was a lot of beer drank over in Vietnam. As you can see there, they're starting to enjoy the singing the song a little bit more than probably they should. "We gotta get out of this place. If it's the last thing I ever do." As you can see there, and used to stack up beer cans, see just how high you could get them. I discovered something. I didn't drink beer either, and I'd sit around with a bunch of guys at the EM club, and you buy a round. I drank Coke. You can go outside and get rid of the beer, but you can't go outside and get rid of the Coke, if you get my drift. So after a while, you start buying around and realize that I didn't get anything the last two times because that Coke just goes too far than you want. But that's kind of you start thinking about getting close now. Here you are, short timer. Oh, short timers, obnoxious people. Nobody wants to be around because here's a guy hollering, "Short! Hey, how many days? Hey, Manny, how many days you got? Jackson, how about you, new guy? Short one and a wake up." In other words, he got one day and a wake up before he goes. And they're all ticked off at him because they may have 360 days or 364 days. And here's this guy going around doing exactly what you want to be doing because you're going to be doing it too, is going, "I'm short, I'm short, I'm so short." And we actually had short timer calendars and short timer sticks. And you let everybody know that when you got short. You want to make sure. And you got a little careful. As you can see the guy there, he's got a Claymore mine in front of him. He's got sandbags under his bunk and concertina wire, and he's laying up under his bunk. And here's his buddy said, "Tomorrow it's back to the land of the big PX, right, Russell? The last night in country jitters." I mean, if you out in the field in those last couple of days, you kind of got almost too careful. because you didn't want one of those to whom it may concern mortar rounds. So you got real careful and real jittery. I remember mine. Listen, there was no way they're gonna get me out of that barracks that last day. And here you are getting on the plane of the land of the last blue sky. There's Victor Charlie, Viet Cong trying to pull you back. The mosquitoes trying to get you. The rats are trying to take you. Mama San's trying to pull you back. The tigers are everything's trying to get you to stay. But parting is such sweet sorrow, not? I remember when I got on that plane, I didn't even breathe good until the pilot finally said, "We have left Vietnamese airspace." And everybody on the plane started hollering and cheering and so forth. But we all just had that feeling the Army just may be mean enough to turn around and go back. We got one more day. Somebody miscounted. And here we are, the difference between 1945 when we came home, you see the parades and so forth. And in 1970, we came home, there ain't nobody there but the protesters. Let me kind of go over that a little bit to welcome home. In 1945, the troops came back. They went over to war, most of them in groups, units, and so forth. And they went over on a ship and they came back on a ship. They had time to readjust. In Vietnam, most of us went over as replacements for people who earlier went over on ships. We were replacements for people who did their duty or wounded or killed and came home. And we got off the airplane told not to wear a uniform. And as you can see back in the back was the protesters and the guys lighting his cigarette, his zip lighter there going, "Where's everybody? Where's all the crowds?" and so forth. But it was a welcome home. That was kind of difference in the welcome homes we got. And as you're a Vietnam vet, it stays with you. You're going into a restaurant, still feeling the need to watch your six. Here he is sitting in a restaurant with his wife. It didn't make any difference. He's sitting in Raleigh, North Carolina, or Cary, North Carolina, or wherever he is. And he says, and his wife says, okay, let's trade seats and I'll face the wall. In other words, you don't ever want your back towards the door or towards the window because it sticks with you. Always be vigilant. And of course, it's also the wannabes. Now, here's a guy talking to the kids. 50 years ago, did you ever think someone would want to be a Vietnam vet? I didn't want to be a Vietnam vet 50 years ago. But today, there's so many people out there who claim to be Vietnam vets. And it's amazing the medals and so forth. Somebody posted the other day, a young guy, looked like he may have been 25, 30 years old. He had on 6 general stars. He was a 6-star general, but he also had a Spec 4 insignia on his sleeve and wannabe. But here it is. I got this for killing 200 NVA, that's North Vietnamese Army, regulars after escaping the Dong Bang POW camp. Any questions? And the kids just blown away. And the other guy comes up and says, "Yeah, and I got a couple Westmoreland." Which ain't the real thing. And you can see all those, he's got general wings or stars on his sleeve, but he's also got sergeants and up and all those medals. He's got Air Force medals. He's got Army medals, Marine medals. He got medals. So many wannabes out there. And it's so funny. Now here's this guy's wife is all upset because anybody had told me, would we be buying bottles of water? And I told them they're crazy. And here she is going, "Yuck, you really drinking from the hose?" You got to remember, he drank out of bomb craters with bugs in it and put the iodine in there and Agent Orange water. And she's all concerned about he's going to get sick drinking out of a hose. It's amazing okay. And you may have noticed, but I think C rations were fattening. I tell you, here's a guy. Now we all, dress up every now and then, and we want to show off our uniforms and all our medals and so forth. And this guy's trying to put on his uniform and says, "How in the hell does an adult outgrow his hat?" He's worried about his hat not fitting. And as you can see, his buttons are popping off his shirt, and he can get his arms in his shirt. I have I still wear the same size socks I wore when I was in Vietnam. And you get the gift that keeps right on giving. See, when you're in Vietnam and they were flying over with helicopters and spraying this, they sprayed defoliant. That kills vegetation. Charlie hides in, and you'll be thankful in a couple of weeks, 40 plus years later. Thanks, Dow, Monsanto, and for everything. As Agent Orange, Agent Blue, Agent Pink, Agent White are killing the Vietnam veterans and their children and their grandchildren. At the time, it might have made Charlie easier to find, but today is paying a tough price. If you're out there and you have a question, we're running out of time, but call us at 919-518-9773. Or we're going to get right on. We're going to keep right on going. We got a couple more slides here. Let's see what we got coming up next. Oh, yes. There we are in Vietnam, waiting through the quagmire. There we are now in the VA, waiting through the quagmire. Just a little older, a little more hairy and so forth, but same. Never underestimate an old man who is also a Vietnam veteran. Hey, we may have white hair and we may be older, but you give us a gun and a chair, we can do about the same thing we did before. Recently, the National Guard said they were trying to recruit us, and I told them, well, if you want to recruit me, just give me a rifle, give me a wheelchair, and push me where I need to be, and I'll be all right. But don't expect me to march. Those of you who are fortunate enough to get out of that place, never dream Vietnam would never get out of us. Thank you for tuning in to the show tonight. Our next show will be 24th of April. Can you believe April is almost all the way through? And as always, from 8 to 9 p.m., I'm looking forward to introducing you to a new author, telling his Vietnam story. Thanking you for taking time to be a part of the Lessons of Vietnam show, and looking forward to joining with you on the 24th. Again, if you have any questions or comments about the show, my email address is dixonbill80@yahoo.com. Be sure to reach out to me and let me know what you thought, so forth. Or hope you enjoyed the show. I enjoyed cartoons and going to cartoons. No matter how bad the war is, you can sit back and look at some of the things now. They weren't not particularly funny back at the time. Y'all have a good tomorrow, and wherever you are, I hope the pollen is better than it is here, and have a nice Easter, and we'll see you on the 24th. Thank you, and talk at you next time.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. If you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section at nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by Telestream's Wirecast software, StreamingGear.com, Carolina Apparel, and DeltaForce.net.